Have you heard about the world's deadliest war in Tigray and its devastating impact on millions of innocent people? If not, it's because this genocidal war is happening in the dark and no one is talking about it.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister is a Nobel Peace Laureate. For the past 8 months, he's been in the news for leading a war on his own people. The people of Tigray are said to have suffered hunger, torture, and rape at the hands of the military.
In our World Lead now, a CNN investigation has uncovered evidence of torture, mass detention, and execution in Ethiopia's Tigray region. For much of the conflict, the United States, the United Nations, and the international community have failed to hold high-level Ethiopian officials to account for their role in atrocities committed in Tigray, and now CNN's findings point to a renewed campaign of ethnic cleansing, one which bears all the hallmarks of genocide as defined by international law.
The head of the World Health Organization says urgent action is needed in the Ethiopian region of Tigray in order to avert genocide.
This is a health crisis for 6 million people, and the world is not paying enough attention. I urge the international community and the media to give this crisis the attention it deserves. There is a very narrow window now to prevent genocide. I repeat, there is a very narrow window now to prevent genocide in Tigray.
It's a horrific tragedy that has been unfolding for more than 2 years in Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray. The Ethiopian government has taken drastic steps to disconnect Tigray from the rest of the world. This includes blocking mobile phone signals, cutting off internet access, denying access to banking, electricity, and other basic services, and preventing international aid organizations from entering the region.
I think it is important to underscore how much since the beginning of the conflict that the federal government of Ethiopia, first and foremost, but not only, has tried to prevent reporting on what is going on. Since the beginning of the conflict, internet has been disconnected in the Tigray region. As we speak, the telephone lines have been down, have been disconnected for 15 months. There's no electricity in the region, there's no banking services. And access is severely restricted. As your correspondent was underscoring, as we speak, since August, there has been no humanitarian access into the region. But even before this, during the 5 months of what the government had declared as a humanitarian truce, aid was only just trickling in. And in that period, for example, fuel was coming in very limited number. And that was having a massive impact on the ability of the humanitarian community to distribute the assistance which was making it in. So I do think it's important to underscore that there has been a deliberate attempt, first and foremost by the federal government, to make it very difficult for the world, journalists, human rights organizations like ours, especially to report in real time. What we do know is devastating, as you underscore. We've documented war crimes by all warring parties, including by the Tigrayan forces against civilians in the Amhara region last year.
The United Nations International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia presents its report to the Human Rights Council at a challenging and perilous time for Ethiopia and its people. Yet, despite the Council's request to all parties to provide the Commission with unhindered access and goodwill, and the goodwill expressed during our mission, we deeply regret that the federal government did not grant the Commission access to any areas outside of Addis Ababa. Following established practice, the Commission applied a standard of reasonable grounds to believe to its factual and legal findings. All of the Commission's findings met this standard. If information did not meet this standard, we reached no conclusion, and in some cases suggested the need for further investigation. Following this methodology, our report finds reasonable grounds to believe that parties to the conflict have committed serious violations and abuses of international human rights and humanitarian law since November 2020. We have reasonable grounds to believe that many of these acts amount to war crimes. We have also reasonable grounds to believe that the federal government and its allies have committed crimes against humanity in Tigray region. Some of these crimes are ongoing. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, we would like to highlight a number of key aspects of our conclusions. First, the report underscores the dire humanitarian situation in Tigray, where the federal government and its allies have denied some 6 million people access to basic services, including electricity, internet, telecommunications, and banking services for over a year. We have reasonable grounds to believe that the federal government and its allies have looted and destroyed goods indispensable for the survival of the civilian population in Tigray, killing livestock, destroying food stores, and raising crops while implementing severe restrictions on humanitarian access. Based on figures from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, the combined effect of these measures has left 90% of the population in dire need of assistance, representing an 80% increase since the beginning of the conflict in the north. Most of the population in Tigray must now survive on limited and nutritionally inadequate diets. Sources also reported an increase in child marriages, child labor, human trafficking, and transactional sex as desperate means of survival. We have reasonable grounds to believe that the widespread denial and obstruction of access to basic services, food, healthcare, and humanitarian assistance amounts to the crime against humanity of persecution and inhumane acts. We also have reasonable grounds to believe that the federal government is committing the war crime of using starvation as a method of warfare. We received information indicating that Tigrayan forces have looted or otherwise misappropriated humanitarian aid. Secondly, the report finds reasonable grounds to believe that the Ethiopian Air Force committed war crimes, including intentionally directing an attack against civilians when it struck a camp for internally displaced persons in Dedabet with an armed drone in January 2022, killing around 60 civilians, including many children.
The shutdown is having an immense impact on my life, and I doubt if words can really express it. It feels like a worst nightmare. With killings, starvation, sexual violence, and massive displacement a commonplace in Tigray, not knowing whether my family members who were sick or are alive at all was excruciating. The worst part is that it still continues.
As we speak, more than 900,000 people in Tigray are in famine conditions. Another 2 million people are on the brink of famine. In total, over 5.2 million people in Tigray are in need of emergency aid, and more than 2.3 million children need humanitarian assistance.
Dr. Tasaye runs a hospital that has barely any medicine, no electricity, and almost no gas. The doctor says no international aid has arrived.
Yes, we need someone to help us. Everybody knows there is a big problem, but they are just talking about the problem, not about the solution. People are dying every day, every minute. We are crying every time we see mothers crying due to death of their kids. Whether they in the other NGOs, they just watch us. That's what is happening here. So we are here just to watch them dying, nothing else.
But the crisis goes beyond just a siege. It is estimated that over 600,000 Tigrayan civilians have been killed in this ongoing genocide. Women and girls are being raped and abducted, and entire villages have been burned to the ground. In addition, cultural sites have been damaged or destroyed in an effort to erase Tigray's history and its identity.
More than 40 churches have been destroyed. We know that in one massacre alone, 78 priests were killed in just one massacre. And there have been dozens and dozens of massacres that have happened in Tigray, and mostly at churches and on religious holidays.
Ethiopia used rape as a tool of war.
Where the government of Abiy Ahmed has admitted that rape is being used as a tool of war in the ongoing Tigray conflict. Let that sink in. Ethiopia's own federal forces are guilty of this heinous crime, rape, as a tool of war.
Total, just this one family lost 7 loved ones less than a week ago.
All of us have to run and hide when they come, even the women. They rape the women and then kill them. May God bring mercy on us because we don't know what we can do.
Hello, this is Dr. Kopram Gabraslasi, the Chief Executive Director of Haidar Hospital in Magala. Tigray has been under de facto siege in 360-degree blockade, so there was no resources, no drugs, no supplies, and equipment is coming to Tigray. And this has resulted in deaths of many patients and suffering of a lot of people in our region. And some of the most important equipment of these hospitals were looted and they are taken to other regions as well as countries like Eritrea. So these hospitals and health centers practically they are now in ruins. So the health system is greatly affected. The staff members as well as the equipment, supplies and so on are not there. So you can say the war has destroyed almost every aspect of health aspect in Tigray. We couldn't give the appropriate treatment to our patients. So the suffering and the misery of the people, it cannot be expressed easily. Hospitals are not working, health centers are not working, and the doctors and other health professionals in these hospitals we are, suffering with the patients altogether. It is very, challenging to work without any salary, without any payment. But what makes it more challenging is you have the capacity, you have the knowledge, how to do things, you know how to treat patients, how to do operations, but you cannot do it because you don't have the right materials. So to see patients dying in your hand while you have the capacity, but you don't have the resource, so seeing these patients dying was very tough for us. It was very, touching. It was painful for us. So our staff, our entire staff, have been, tortured the whole 1.5 year now. We have hospitals to be reconstructed. We have, a country to be rebuilt now. The whole region is now under ruins. So to help rebuild it, we will need your help. All we do to our diaspora sisters and brothers and friends of Tigray in general is to help us in raising funds and sending it to Tigray. Thank you.
This is a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented proportions, and it demands the immediate attention of the international community.
The situation in Ethiopia is spiraling out of control. Violence and destruction have reached alarming levels. The social fabric is being ripped apart. Hostilities in the Tigray region of Ethiopia must end now, including the immediate withdrawal and disengagement of Eritrean armed forces from Ethiopia. There is no military solution. Civilians are paying a horrific price. Indiscriminate attacks, including in residential areas, are killing more innocent people every day, damaging critical infrastructure and limiting access to vital services. Hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes since hostilities resumed in August, many of them for the second time. The United Nations is ready to support the African Union in every possible way to end this nightmare for the Ethiopian people. We need the urgent resumption of talks towards an effective, lasting political settlement. And the international community must rally together now for peace in Ethiopia. Civilians must be protected, and so too humanitarian workers who are being attacked and even killed delivering life-saving humanitarian aid. The level of need is staggering. The problem with wars is when both sides think they can win the war. And we have had episodes in which both sides have affirmed that conviction. My belief is that there is really no military solution. And it's important to think about the need to reconcile the communities that have been so dramatically impacted by this war.
We cannot sit idly by while this genocide continues. It is our moral responsibility to speak out and demand action to end this horrific tragedy. Join us in raising awareness about this humanitarian crisis and help the victims by donating and attending our upcoming charity conference, AI for Tigray, around the theme New Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence. Together, we can make a difference.